Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NBA Edition. I'm Kevin Roberts, getting ready to go over the DraftKings main slate for tonight. 7 games, should be a fun one. Yesterday was a weird one because basically, if you had the 1v1 of Andrew Nemhard versus Benedict Mathurin, that was game over. So that was brutal, and obviously there was late news too to watch. But hopefully you did okay. We definitely did have some hits in Discord, so that's always nice to see. If you need extra help beyond this video, come join us in our free Discord. We have an NBA chat and a general chat, so you come in, share your lineups, and get advice. And if you want core plays to build your lineups around, you can check those out on our Patreon. Obviously, the goal is to help you win. If anything we do in this video helps, just smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. That helps us out quite a bit as well. The way we do this is we go position by position, highlighting the best plays of the slate. It's a sizable slate, 7 games here. I'm on the FanDuel one. My bad. Let's hit that over to DraftKings. That's the full slate there. It's a lot more games to manage. Nice thing is we do have a night slate at 3 games tonight. So if you want to play the night slate, you can come over and check out our picks there too on Patreon. All right, let's go over to the point guard position. Started off with SGA and Cade coming in with basically the same projection, very different ownership and very different prices. So right away, I just think I'm leaning Cade very heavily, 1.2K in savings. The matchup with the Mavs is pretty darn good. Massive ownership. So that's the downside with Cade. His game does still have a pretty big spread, 9-point spread in favor of the Pistons, even though they're on the road. I would imagine that makes a lot of sense. The Dallas is extremely shorthanded and not very good at this point. But it's still a road game, and Cade projects extremely well. I think there's a decent chance he gets there in 3 quarters, and you can always hope that he goes 4. 10.4K, pretty good price for a guy who's displayed a massive ceiling, 66 fantasy points in his last game, 54 plus in 3 of his last 5. The blowout risk is real. So if you don't love the ownership or the blowout risk, that would be the reason why you fade. The blowout risk is not any better for SGA when you're paying much more money. OKC is a massive 21-point favorite against the Hornets at home. LaMelo, Mark Williams, all these dudes for the Hornets, they matter, and they are not going to play. So pretty unlikely we see 4 quarters of SGA. I'd definitely side with Cade being the much more likely option to actually reach his potential here. So just SGA does not feel very comfortable to me. I'm just not going to go there, but it is still SGA, and Jalen Williams is not going to be in once again. So naturally more usage is going to flow his way. Can SGA crush and overperform in comparison to Cade in 3 quarters? Maybe, but for almost 12K, I need 4 quarters of SGA, and I do not think we're going to get that. Working our way down here, let me sort for the projection here. It gets pretty bleak after that. So Cade feels like a priority right away, ownership aside. Quentin Grimes, I'm not going to fight it anymore. Quentin Grimes does not really have a minutes limit, and he keeps having monster usage. Look at this usage, 37, 30, 34, 42. It is disgusting, and it's not going away. We don't really know from game to game whether he's going to play 30 minutes or 43 minutes. But the floor is pretty good and the ceiling is absurd. I'm not going to pay 8.2 or 8.8K for Quentin Grimes to find out if this is the day Nick Nurse wants to, bench him at halftime or limit his minutes to 25 or whatever the case may be. And by the way, he is shooting out of his mind. So that probably is going to stop at some point. I'm just not going to pay almost 9K to find out. I think he projects fine and his role is amazing. So if you want to play Quentin Grimes, I'm not going to stop you from it. It's just not something I'm going to do. $500 less for Tyler Hero feels a little bit better to me. Not a good matchup at all against Houston, that's for sure. But this game is, a little bit interesting just because it has a nice spread in Miami. And also Hero does have massive usage and is cheaper than usual. 26% usage rate in each of his last 3 games. The floor has been remarkably low with him lately, which is not always good to see, but 8.3K for a kind of overlooked Tyler Hero is certainly interesting. Derek White is a little bit priced up for me at 7.7K. We have no Jaylen Brown, so that's why. And they are facing the Jazz. So, the projection looks good. Derek White in a vacuum is a fine play. I don't love that his price has skyrocketed to almost 8K. I think I'm instead looking at maybe paying 11K for Tatum, going and looking at Drew and Peyton Pritchard, stuff like that. I think White is definitely in play, but I don't love the price at this point. Stephon Castle is a little bit more interesting, $1,000 savings, nice matchup with Philly, and has a similar projection at similar ownership. So I think Castle looks better by comparison, but certainly both are in play. I would just lean Castle at this point. Jalen Green on the road against Miami, I think it's just okay, but with Amen Thompson back, I'm not super excited to pay almost $8K for Jalen Green. CJ McCollum gets a massive boost with no Zion Williamson. So with Zion out and obviously all the other guys that Pels have been missing, he does look good in terms of usage and upside. The price is fine when you consider all that at 7.1K. The matchup on the road against the Wolves is not 14-point spread as well. So I'd definitely be leaning more towards the Pels value in this game and less into paying a premium for guys who might not see the whole game and or just might not have a lot of success in a difficult matchup. But we know McCollum can get there, and he does have a ceiling, 50 fantasy points 3 games ago. If the game stays close, and if he's hitting his shots, 7.1 would probably be too cheap for him. Amen Thompson looks to be limited in his first game back in a while, 8.9K on the road against Miami with a low total. It's just not the spot to pay a premium for Amen. Nobody's going to be on him, so there's that, but I just don't think I want to do that. Jared Butler at 6.3K against the Spurs. Good matchup. The projection's okay. Don't love that he's already carrying ownership and his price is coming up. So I would just rather do something else. He's going to continue to start in a close game. He'd play 30 plus minutes probably, but they might have other bodies. Let's just check Philly's rotation here. Maxey remains out. Oubre's out. It's mostly the same usual suspects here, but they're not cut down to 8 guys or anything. So I think Butler is still going to see a good amount of run. I just don't love that the price keeps ticking up. Like, don't be fooled by the last game, though. That game was a 33-point blowout against OKC. We could probably expect closer to like 30, 35 minutes if the game stays close. And against the Spurs, who are not a strong defensive team and are lacking bodies, it's fairly reasonable to expect to stay close. So Butler right now is a fair play. Just don't think he's an amazing play. Keontae George at 6.6 against Boston. Utah is certainly going to be without some guys, but it's never easy to feel good about playing anybody against the Celtics. That's for sure. They are without John Collins and Lauri Markkanen, possibly without Jordan Clarkson as well. So a little bit more usage could flow to Keontae George. Just don't really want to play him, and he'll probably be operating off the bench as well. So again, not very exciting. Don't think I'm going to do that. I think instead of paying a premium for CJ McCollum, it's hard to say at 7.1 is a premium, but considering the situation and the context, it kind of feels like it is. Jose Alvarado, though, feels like the much better play. 4.6K, pushing a 30-point fantasy projection. Massive chalk right now, but he's kind of one of the few values we can actually feel good about. So I don't mind him at all at 4.6. Whether he starts or not, I think he's viable. If he starts, he's a core play. If he doesn't start, I think I'd still like him. I just would not be forcing him in every lineup. Peyton Pritchard and Drew Holiday kind of feel like the same guy here. I think if the ownership goes like really hard one way, I'll consider going the other. Peyton Pritchard at 6.1K against the Jazz. That is a game that could go full blowout mode, 14-point spread in favor of Boston. He and Drew are just going to get extra usage with no Jaylen Brown, so that is comforting. Pritchard has not been great. Like, this is a lot of red. His shot is just not falling, and when he does not hit his threes, he's just not going to pan out. He doesn't typically do a ton more beyond score, unless like Drew and Jalen and like somebody else are out, and then he's like out there for a ton of minutes and doing everything. Then he can do all kinds of stuff. Not like he's like a one-dimensional player, really. Just like his role when he comes off the bench is to shoot threes and you get score. But at 6.1K against the Jazz in a game that could blow out and give him extra run, I think he looks really good. I don't mind him at all. And just look at where the ownership lies. Like right now, Drew is projected to be double as owned and is only $600 less. So I kind of favor Pritchard here. Drew has been on the heater though, playing massive minutes. Usage rate is actually ticking up more than what we're used to seeing. And he's been producing big time, not just scoring, getting a lot of assists. He had 12 assists a couple games ago. He's just doing everything. So I don't mind Drew at 5.5K. I think if he's going to be more owned than Pritchard, though, I think I would just lean Pritchard just to get a little bit different and kind of get the same play. As we go down here, Chris Paul remains in play at 4.6K. Don't really want to play him, but he is still getting a little bit of burn at 34 fantasy points last game. I think I would rather go get Vassell or Castle, like I already talked about. And there's other guys too for the Spurs, but Chris Paul is still 4.6K. He's still in play. Dante DiVincenzo is an okay value at 5.3. Just, it depends what happens with Mike Conley and if Dante comes off the bench or not, but I still think he's a fair value at that price. Spencer Dinwiddie kind of depends on what the situation is for Dallas. Do they have a lot of bodies or not? Right now, it looks like they are going to have 1, 2, 3, 4. They'll probably have 10 or 11 guys. If Brandon Williams is in, yeah, he's probable. So Dinwiddie is not like a super lock play like he could have been the other day. And at 6.2 with the elevated price tag, I think I'd be leaning more towards Brandon Williams than anything else. Jordan Hawkins is not a bad punt here at 3.2K with the Pels shorthanded, projection for 28 minutes. Nice, very nice projection for 3.2. Borderline core play when you look at that. So I think it might make sense to choose between him and Jose Alvarado. But especially if Hawkins is off the bench and Alvarado starts, that is an interesting decision point because the game is, decently likely to blow out, and you're getting basically almost a 3K flat punt coming off the bench with all that usage. So Hawkins looks really interesting. Damian Bow, 5K is a bit expensive. I know LaMelo is out, and somebody on the Hornets is going to benefit from that. But it's tough to know exactly how to play this. It just depends on who starts. If Bow starts at 5K, I guess he's in play. That just feels like a lot to trust this guy. Like when he's been getting run 26, 29, and 33 minutes, but he's had a pretty low floor, and he's not really a very good shooter. So if he's not connecting again in a brutal matchup against the Thunder, it's going to look bad in a hurry. And nothing else that OKC offers here is feeling a whole lot better. You could certainly look at somebody like KJ Simpson if he's there on the active roster. He has not played in a while, though. He last played on February 27th, so probably would need him to start to do that. But the Hornets are going to be shorthanded. They're without two of their top guys here tonight, so just keep an eye on who actually starts in that game and who is available. Nick Smith Jr., kind of in the same boat, 5K. That just feels like a lot to pay for a guy, even with higher usage, because there's just a really bad spot. AJ Johnson ticks up a full 1,000. He was 3.5K the other day, was a really good value. Two slates in a row for him, but now he's 4.5K in a bad spot against the Magic. The thing is with Washington is they played Jordan Poole and I think it was Marcus Smart or Chris Middleton, but then in the second half of their last game, they both got benched. So I don't trust Jordan Poole. I don't trust any of the main guys for Washington at all anymore. So you could still play AJ Johnson, and you could still play any of these other values like Jalen Martin or Vukovic or any of these other values for Washington and just take a shot on them because Washington's going to play their younger guys a little bit more. We can't trust any of it really, but if that is going to be the case, that I would definitely lean that way over, paying 6.8K for Jordan Poole. Brandon Williams at 5.8K. That feels gross. Jaden Hardy, obviously, he was limited last game, and now the Mavs are kind of more at full strength, so not really into that. Not seeing a lot of punts that we can do. I think right now, as things stand, I'll refresh the news as I'm doing this, but as things stand, I think the best value is residing with the Pelicans on the main slate. And then, of course, you do have to consider the Hornets guys, depending on who starts. Like KJ Simpson's projecting for 16 minutes. If he starts at 3.8, I wouldn't mind that. And then, of course, if you're banking on the blowout, you can go with him on the bench. It's just like guys like Bow and, Nick Smith Jr. at 5K. It's tough to really get excited about that. All right, shooting guard Anthony Edwards continues to look good against the Pels. Good projection, best projection of the shooting guard position, and he's not owned, so that's exciting. I think he's a really good tourney play for sure. Nice leverage play on the expensive guys like Cade and SGA in terms of, he's still not cheap. He's almost 10K, but it's a really, really good spot. You're going to have interest in Pels anyway, so a cheap, or not cheap, but a high upside contrarian run back in Ant is really, really appealing to me. A lot of interest is going to be in the Magic guys against the Wizards. That's another game with blowout risk, 9-point spread. I'm a little surprised it's not bigger. Obviously, Banchero is going to get a lot of attention. Some of the guards, I didn't actually touch on it, but Cole Anthony is questionable. If Cole Anthony is in, Cole Anthony is going to look like, let me see, is he actually, so he's point guard only. Cole Anthony at 5.1, if he's in, I don't mind it. He bombed last time we trusted him against the Wizards. If he's out, we can take a shot on Anthony Black or Corey Joseph. Does it feel good? No, but we can do that if we want to. But yeah, so Franz Wagner, him and Banchero are going to look good here. He's $1,000 cheaper than Anthony Edwards. He's going to be twice or triple as much as owned as Ant, and for good reason. But I think for tourneys, it makes more sense to go up to Anthony Edwards here and kind of just hope that game blows out and those guys don't hit. That said, if you're going to pay a premium for the Magic guys, I do lean towards Franz Wagner here. 8.6K smash spot against the Wizards. They don't defend inside. They don't defend outside. Wagner surprisingly takes it in quite a bit. And of course, he is a sharpshooter as well. So I think he looks awesome. You can play Quentin Grimes here, Derek White here, Castle, some of the same guys we talked about. Devin Vassell, I briefly mentioned with Castle. They're kind of the same play. I like that he's small forward eligible. If the ownership was like exponentially gapped here, where Castle was like 30% and Devin was 10, I would lean Devin. I just think they're the same play, same price. Everything's the same. They both look good though. You can pair them too if you want to. I just don't think I want to go out of my way to stack the Philly game that much. Does have a really nice total though, 235 total. It's just, do I trust that game is going to be just bonkers like every other Sixers game has been? That is something you have to decide for sure. But those guys do look good. CJ McCollum again, you can use him here. All the guys are pretty much the same here. I'm just trying to make sure I'm not. Yeah, Lonnie Walker's back for the Philly, 4.4K. If you trust his minutes, I think he's an okay play. I think Bruce Brown feels a little bit better. 4.1K, played big minutes last game, 31 minutes, 34 fantasy points. So he's fine. I don't mind him at all. Cheap play for sure. I think right now, dollar for dollar, Alvarado and Jordan Hawkins feel better. But Bruce Brown is also small forward eligible, and they're just pretty short-handed, so I don't mind it. Playing all three feels a bit gross, especially it's like if the game stays close, we got to start thinking about other Pels that might be a little bit more interesting as well. Kayson Wallace, if he's in with some of the other guys out for OKC, I think he's an okay value at 4.3. If he's out, we can consider Isaiah Joe as well. AJ Johnson, like I said, I think he's okay at 4.5K, but I don't really want to do that. I think I'd prefer him to be cheaper just because the floor is not massive. I mean, the ceiling is not massive. All right, it probably does it for shooting guard for now. We'll see what opens up later. At small forward up top, Jason Tatum. I do not like the price at 11K against a bad team that doesn't want to win in a game with a 14-point spread. So if you wanted a reason to fade Jason Tatum, there's your reason. Also, he's 11K. Like, he's not cheap for a guy who does have a massive ceiling, but also kind of has a low floor for a premium star player. Like, great usage rate, but sometimes he either doesn't score the ball well or he scores a ton of points and just does nothing else for no reason. Jaylen Brown being out helps him, but there's still Porzingis, there's still Drew, there's still Peyton Pritchard. So, like, he should crush here, no doubt about it. It just feels kind of gross to pay 11K for this dude on this slate with such a massive spread. He's a great play, though. We'll see where we get with him later in the day, depending on what else opens up. Like, if there's a ton of value, we might just need to eat the Tatum chalk if he becomes chalky, because you don't want Tatum to be like 40% owned and he gets like 80 and then you're under on that. That would be bad. In a vacuum, he looks like a great play. I just definitely fear the blowout. Again, Wagner and Vassell can be used here. Najee Marshall, 8K with PJ back and the Mavs getting bodies back. That's a no for me. I think Najee still can get the usage to get there. But the Pistons are not as friendly of a matchup as people like to think they are. They're not the old Pistons, of like the last few years. So with those other guys back, 8K feels a little bit steep. Don't think I want to do that. Not super interested in any of these other guys here. I think Keldon Johnson is the first next guy I'd look at 4.7K. If you believe in the Spurs versus Sixers game, that is not a bad value play to target at all. He's just going to be a little bit owned. That's the only downer there. Aaron Wiggins at 5.7. The price is ticking up, but no Jalen Williams still. So if with Jalen Williams still out, I think we can look at Aaron. And then if Kayson Wallace is out, that just helps Wiggins even more. Justin Edwards, he is decent, cheap exposure to that Philly Spurs game if you want to do that. Lonnie Walker, we already talked about too. Nothing new over here. I guess Bryce Sensabaugh could be an okay value at 4.1K. Again, tough matchup against Boston here, but they are without Lowry. They're without John Collins. They already are without a bunch of other guys, kind of like lower ancillary players. And then Jordan Clarkson also may not play. I would not put it past them to sit Walker Kessler either. So as it stands, he's an okay play at 4.1. If Kessler was also out, he would look really good. Ricky Council is okay at 4.9. And then Jalen Martin, he's been getting minutes and he's still only 3.5K. If he's going to get like 30 minutes, I like him a lot at 3.5. Like, right, I made him an early core play just because they're not playing Poole and these other veterans, full minutes right now. So they're going to lean towards his younger guys and see what they have. So Jalen Martin, it's risky for sure. But at 3.5K, you're not assuming that much risk. So I do like him unless a lot of stuff opens up that I like more. Like right now, if I had to choose between Jalen Martin or Jordan Hawkins, I would go Hawkins. But I do like Jalen Martin right now as things stand. All right, over at power forward, you can use Tatum there. He's the best guy there. But right behind him is Banchero. So dollar for dollar, Banchero looks like the better play. and he's coming in with more ownership. I don't have anything bad to say about either of these guys, except for the fact that they do have interesting teammates we can turn to create leverage if their ownership gets out of control. And both of their games look like blowouts. So I don't really want to play the blowout game, but there's a lot of spots, like every spot really, where there's these premium superstars we want to go get. They're at risk of only playing 3/4. So I think dollar for dollar, Banchero looks like the better play here, but at the same time, I think Wagner looks a little bit more interesting than Banchero. But you only can really play the studs that we have. So Tatum and Banchero definitely look good. I don't have a problem getting there. Miles Bridges is going to be looking at a ton of usage. So that's really the only plus he has going for him. There's no LaMelo Ball here, no Mark Williams. Can he get enough minutes and actually produce in a really bad spot against OKC? That's the question. He projects well. The price is terrible. I don't even know what his ownership's actually going to end at, just because those guys aren't there. So in theory, he could be a really, really good play. I don't really like it based off the whole situation, but the upside is there. Bam is okay. PJ played 38 minutes last game, so they're not going to hold him back. I actually don't mind him at 7.9K. He's a way better play than Najee Marshall at this point. He is basically Dallas's only true star, and if you want to call him that. Last game, he should have hit 38 minutes. He had 26 real points, and he still only had 33 fantasy points. He should have smashed. I think there's a decent chance he makes up for that tonight, so I do like him. My favorite play here, though, is Jeremy Sohan. 5.1K, played 37 minutes last game, and he's in this big total game with the Sixers, and the Sixers don't really have anybody that's going to contain him. Not that he's like the biggest usage guy in the world in the first place, like 17, 18, 17. Like, he's really going to get rebounds and facilitate and stuff like that. So I just think the price is good for the minutes. I think he's a really good play, and he projects really well. Chet with SGA back, kind of meh. It looks like they're limiting his minutes and there's blowout risk. I don't really want to do that, but he's a good value and nobody's going to be on him. Naz Reid at 5.7K. I gave him a shout last time out, 28 fantasy points at 5.1. His price came back up, as it should. In a game with possible blowout and just a really good matchup with the Pels, he looks like a really solid value on a slate where, like, there is some value, but it looks kind of gross. And then after that, like, there really isn't that much value. Tari Eason is at 6.4. He's okay. Not a great matchup on the road against the Heat, but at 6.4, I don't mind it. He crushed last time out. He's been playing really well and getting pretty good minutes. So I do not think it's a bad play, especially seeing that he's not going to be owned at the moment. I think he could be, look at like Keldon Johnson's picking up ownership. You have to pay up way over him to get there. But I just think he's going to float a little bit under the radar, or a lot of it under the radar, and look pretty interesting. Kelly Olynyk and Karlo Makovic, those guys look solid here, 4.5K and 5.1. No Zion. So they are going to look pretty good here. Kelly looks a little bit better, but he's a little bit more expensive. So right now, if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with Carlo. I think you can pair them together, but I think I would probably just play Makovic if I had to choose one. Probably does it for power forward. Moving over to center. We got Bam leading the way, which kind of tells you all you need to know. Center's pretty gross. Houston's not the best matchup. On the opposite side, you have Şengün, way too expensive at this point with Amen back and a date with Miami on the road. Very low total game. Not a fun matchup against Bam Bam. I really want nothing to do with either of these centers. If I was going to play one, it's going to be Bam. PJ Washington, I'd play over both of them. Porzingis against the Jazz with no Jaylen Brown is very interesting. I like him a lot at that price, 8.2K. Don't love the minutes cap, but nobody's on him really, and I think the focus is going to be more on the guards and Tatum. So Porzingis, hey, if he's going to fly under the radar, I really like Porzingis tonight. Jalen Duren at 6.7. Obviously, he's foul trouble risk every time he goes out there, but the Mavs don't have anybody who can stop him, and he projects pretty well. If he can just avoid foul trouble and smash early, I like him a good deal at 6.7. Rudy Gobert, 6.1 against the Pels. Just a good value. Not really like super high ceiling or anything, but I don't mind him. I still think I prefer Naz, but Rudy is a solid play for sure. Naz just has power forward eligibility, and he's a little bit cheaper, so just a little bit more appealing to me. Hartenstein's minutes are a little bit wonky, but 6.6K against the Hornets with no Jalen Williams, I think that's an okay play. I don't mind that at all if you land there. If Walker Kessler plays, I don't really trust it that much at 7.5. You're paying a bit of a steep tag to go maybe randomly get unowned upside out of nowhere in a bad matchup. Like, that doesn't feel great to me. What I'd rather do is play Kyle Filipowski at 6.3 and hope that Walker is limited and Filipowski smashes. As things stand, Filipowski is just like just okay because there's no Lowry and Collins. But if Walker were limited or out, he would be a smash play in my opinion. Wendell Carter really doesn't have a massive ceiling and he has a low floor, but he's facing the Wizards. So at 4.7K, he looks good and he's not even that chalky right now. So that's pretty interesting. Nurkic, no Mark Williams. So if Nurkic gets a spot start, the spot is brutal against OKC and it's probably going to be a blowout, but he's also only 3.7K. So if you want to take the risk, I really don't mind that at all. He is a border. He's pushing to be a core play for me if he starts, just because he can get there at 3.7K in 3 quarters. And if the game were to somehow stay close, he could nuke. So do not mind him at all. If you want to go the Wizards youth movement, Tristan Vukovic, like I was saying before, he is fine. Not a good matchup. His prices come up, but if they're going to play the young guys, he's in play. And lastly, Musa Diabate, 3.8K. If you don't want to trust Nurkic and you think the game blows out, he's basically the same play at only $100 more. I don't think that's a bad play at all with Mark Williams out. I will also mention Kai Jones because I did roll him out there last time. He only played 24 minutes, but smashed with 34 fantasy points. He smashed the last game before that. If he starts at 5.1K, I actually like him a good deal. Could still be a little bit limited, but he's proven to be a pretty good per minute guy, so I do not mind taking the risk there. All right, that does it for the player-by-player breakdown. Overall, the problem is there are actually a decent amount of studs, but there is not like a true Luka, Giannis, Jokic to me on this slate. Like SGA would normally be that guy, but SGA, Tatum, Banchero, Cade, they're all in pretty ugly spots to the point where like we cannot actually trust that they're going to play for full quarters. You don't want to ever play for the blowout. So in this case, you got to play somebody, and I think I'm just leaning towards Cade. I think Cade's the best value, and then we can go get other guys and target some of these values and feel reasonably good about them, and maybe go get a secondary guy like Anthony Edwards or go get Wagner and just kind of play the leverage against Banchero. You could still play these other guys. I just think it's going to be pretty dicey. So if everybody's in that same boat up top, I would rather save a little bit of money and kind of protect my investment there. All right, that is going to do it for me. Hopefully this helps you out. If it does, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Come join us in Discord and also take advantage of our core plays over at Patreon. Thanks for watching and good luck.